Hi, I'm Mrs. Andrews, and I am the K-12 ESOL coordinator for our district, and I also am the K-4 math interventionist for our elementary. I have the privilege of reading to you chapters 29 and 30 from Wish, our One School, One Book. For this month, the author is Barbara O'Connor. So grab your book and join me. The next day, Mama called. Bertha talked to her first, soft and low, with her face toward the kitchen wall. I know, Carla, but think of Charlie. Not fair. Finally, she gave the phone to me. Hello, I said, and felt like a baby. Why couldn't I be strong and sassy math like Jackie? Then Mama told me how she can't wait for me to come home and she'd been lonely and nobody understands what she's been going through. And Jackie thinks she's so gall darn grown up, she's not coming back home, and that's fine by me, she said. After that, she started on Scrappy. What a no-good-nothing he is and how he left her high and dry. Doesn't anybody ever think about me? She said. I knew I wasn't really supposed to answer that, so I didn't. Scrappy got a tattoo of a blackbird in a cage on the back of his hand, I said. And guess what happened next? She hung up. Click. Just like that. What happened? Bertha asked. I shrugged. I guess she didn't want to hear about that tattoo. Bertha stood there slack-jawed, looking from me to the phone and then back at me. Maybe y'all just got disconnected, she said. I bet she'll call back. So we stood there, staring at the phone while the refrigerator hummed and a cat purred beside us. But the phone didn't ring. Bertha shook her head. Nothing ever changes with her, she said. Carla, Carla, Carla. It's always about Carla. Then she grabbed me by the shoulders and said, I'm sorry, Charlie. I shouldn't have said that. It's okay. No, she said. No, it isn't. She's your mama. I wanted to ask Bertha if I was really going to go back to Raleigh, but I was scared to. Hadn't she said that she would make things right? But what did that even mean anyway? I decided to walk down to the Odoms, hoping my swirling insides would settle down. I clipped Wishbone's leash to his collar, and we set off down the road. I let him stop every now and then to sniff a tangle of weeds or inspect a tin can on the side of the road. My swirling stomach did not settle down until the Odom's house came into view. Then, just the sight of it set things right again. That weed-filled yard was littered with balls and tools and shoes. Burl's legs stuck out from under his truck in the driveway. Music from a radio drifted out of Mr. Odom's shop in the garage. Cotton was lining up bricks along the edge of the road, and Lenny was swinging a baseball bat at rocks that hit the road sign with a clang. And then there was Howard, working on a crossword puzzle on the steps. By the time I got to the front porch, Mrs. Odom was already out the door, giving Wishbone a piece of cheese. I sat on the steps for a while, not talking, watching Howard working on his puzzle. The thing about Howard was, you could be with him and talk, or you could be with him and not talk. He liked you either way. We went inside to play Monopoly, which I personally think is boring, but Howard likes it. Wishbone got mud on the floor, but Mrs. Odom didn't even care. She brought us orange jello and coffee mugs, and she let Cotton jump on the couch. I kept trying to make myself tell Howard about the squinty-eyed social services lady and how the situation at home had improved. I wanted to put a smile on my face and take a deep breath and say, guess what? I'm going back to Raleigh. But I just sat there eating my orange jello while Howard put another hotel on Boardwalk. Jackie called that night and told me she couldn't wait to see me again. She told me her new boyfriend, Jake, would take me for a ride on his motorcycle, and she could put blue streaks in my hair if I wanted. And I'm finally getting my own apartment, Charlie, so you can have the bedroom all to yourself. And I don't want to go back to Raleigh, I said. Silence. I said, I don't want to go back to Raleigh, I hollered. How come? 'Cause I want to stay here in Colby. But I thought you wanted to come back. Jackie let out a big, heavy sigh, and then she started with, I told you this, and I told you that. And what could I do but agree with her? She had told me all that. How I had Gus and Bertha treating me like a princess, and those good-hearted old Odoms thanking the good Lord for me at the supper table. How Howard was the nicest friend I could ever want. How I had these beautiful mountains and that little porch under the stars. I just hadn't seen all of those things until now. I'd been so busy making my wish that I hadn't seen things the way that they really were. But Bertha's going to make things right, I told Jackie. What does that mean? She said. Well, I'm not sure. Then she said she'd call again later, and I went to bed with my stomach so tangled up in knots I couldn't sleep. I laid my cheek against Wishbone's warm side and listened to his slow, steady breathing. I couldn't even think about that clothesline of troubles. Shoot, I had so many troubles, that line was liable to fall right over. Chapter 30. The next day, Mama called again. I could hear her voice clear across the kitchen while she talked to Bertha. It was loud and fast. Bertha kept saying, Slow down, Carla, and what are you talking about? Then she said, Wait, what? Chattanooga? With who? For how long? Bertha kept shaking her head, and her face got redder by the minute. Then she hollered, What about Charlie? You know, your daughter? Bertha almost never got mad about anything more than a mouse. Bertha almost never got mad about anything more than a cat bringing a mouse inside. So it was a bit of a shock to hear her yelling like that. And then it got worse. She lit into Mama, telling her how she needed to get a hold of herself and act like a mother, how she needed to think about somebody besides herself sometime. So you're just going to waltz on up to Chattanooga and come back and be a mother when you're good and ready? Is that it, Carla? And then Bertha was staring at the phone in her hand, and the silence on the other end felt heavy and sad there in that little kitchen. Am I going back to Raleigh? Popped out of my mouth when I wasn't even expecting it to. No, you aren't, Bertha said. Then she told me she had some calls to make, and I should just go on down to Howard's. I told Howard everything, starting with that squinty-eyed social services lady telling us how the situation in Raleigh had improved, and ending with Bertha saying, No, you aren't. And when I was done, he said, Ain't that Bertha the best? And wasn't that so like Howard, finding the only good part when things are bad? I wondered what he thought about a mama who just waltzes up to Chattanooga instead of making orange jello in coffee mugs. For a minute, I even wondered if he still wanted to be my friend, knowing my family was all broken up like it was. And that thought flew right out of my mind when he said, Let's build a fort. So we spent the afternoon in the Odom's dusty, ramshackle garage searching for stuff to make a fort with. Scraps of wood, a warped table with no legs, a rusty stop sign riddled with bullet holes. Cotton kept following us around saying, What about this? And holding up something dumb like a broken hamster cage or an empty paint can. Wishbone liked to went crazy, sniffing around for mice and chipmunks or whatever else might have been in that garage, chewing on the bags of birdseed or nesting in a busted radiator. Lenny and Burl helped us drag everything to the woods at the edge of the yard, and then Howard wanted to sit on the porch and draw up a plan for the fort. Me? I'd just dive right in, but not Howard. He was a planner. We worked out on our fort for a while, but it was too hot, so we went inside and laid on the living room floor in front of the fan. I stared up at the water-stained ceiling and said, I hope I don't have to go back to Raleigh. My voice came out all quivery. I had to swallow hard to keep the tears from coming. I hoped Howard wouldn't say, I thought you wanted to go back to Raleigh. He didn't. He just said, You're not. Well, how do you know? I just know. He said that so firm and sure that I felt better right away. After a while, Mrs. Odom came in and told me that Bertha had called and that I should go home. So I tied Wishbone's leash to Lenny's bike and headed off up the road with my stomach starting that familiar swirl again. What if Bertha hadn't been able to make things right for me after all? And you need to go on to the next and final chapter, which will be read by Mrs. Shaughnessy, our music teacher.